Welcome back to the enLIGHTenUP podcast, and if you're new to the show, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Lisa Watson, and I will be joined by my co-hosts Nicole Frolick and Brian Koenigberg. The enLIGHTenUP podcast is a weekly show that provides an unconventional and refreshing spin on spirituality, where three friends and weekly guests share informative, fun, and usually off-the-wall conversation. And unlike others, we provide fringe and skeptical viewpoints on all topics, because it's been our experience that the echo chamber is a pretty boring place from which to learn. So regardless of where you are on your spiritual journey, we can promise you'll find a place to fit in here. So we invite you to sit down, grab a drink, and listen in on our casual, entertaining, and hopefully enlightening conversation. And if you're interested in supporting our podcast and helping us to be able to continue to produce, enhance, and expand the show for our audience, then please send your support to our PayPal account at info@enlightenup.us, or go to our website, enlightenup.us, and check out our merchandise shop, where you can purchase merchandise that will allow you to express your spiritual humor. All profits go towards the show. Thank you again so much for listening and supporting us. And now, let's jump right into the episode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to enLIGHTenUP. We are so happy to be back with you again this week. And today we have another wonderful teacher for the Quantum Revolution Tour joining us today. Her name is Jen Ramsey, and she is a life and business strategist who helps people find their passion and tear down the walls of fear and anxiety, keeping them locked in a box. Coming from a background in a corporate consulting, she knows what it takes to turn life and old patterns on their head and live successfully from the heart and on your terms. As a key member of the Quantum Revolution team, she will lead the dance activations in Las Vegas designed to help you feel the freedom of living inside your body and find your purpose. She will also teach you how to live your new quantum reality when you return home. Jen, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I am just fantastic. Thank you so much, Nicole, Lisa, and Brian, just for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here with you all.
Thank you for joining us. And you're in Australia, right?
I am. So yes, this accent
Good
is
morning.
a little good. It is good morning. It is good morning, Brian. Yes. So this accent is a little bit different. It's just a pleasure it's really exciting thing for me to be working and being part of the Quantum Revolution team, because it really shows you that we are in a global environment now, and it doesn't matter where you are on the planet, we can come together and create something amazing. So I feel really honored.
I changed my phone setting to speak to me in an Australian accent, so I think it sounds just perfect.
I love it. Yes, I understand. I do understand Americans do like the Australian accent. Sometimes when I'm there, people think that I'm English. And a little side note, last time I was in the US a couple of years ago, and I was coming through LAX quite late at night, and I needed to fill up my water bottle, and I spoke to the security. I just went to the security desk because there was literally no one there. It was quite an unusual time at LAX. And I said, look, I'd love to, could you tell me where the water fountain is, please? And the guys, both of them there, said to me, they said, yes, we can, but we've got something we need you to do for us before you go fill up your water bottle. And I said, sure. I was a little bit uncertain. And they said, can you just say that word water again? Because my accent is so different. I went water instead of water. So
That was good.
That was really good.
That was good American.
You've been practicing
ladder.
your American.
yeah, I listen. Well, listen to you guys quite a bit as well. So yeah, no, but it's fun. It's fun. We're all different, but yet we're all the same underneath, I think. So which is really
Yeah.
good.
And I lived in the Cayman Islands for almost 10 years, and my first roommate was Australian. And so I just started taking on all your slang and, the bottle shop or the bottle stop and what did you call it? The boot and
Yes, the
all
boot.
these different.
I know there are some
it's-
differences.
And the C word, because the Australians use it like it's going out of style.
So do the British. It's not a big thing anywhere but
No.
North America.
Just in North America.
Yeah, well, it's probably not a word I use often, but yeah, I'm hearing you. I know it's we're probably a little bit more laid back here in some ways, and we do have some we have some different terminologies. The other thing that I find as I've been working more and more with people in the US is everyone's aversion to our dangerous animals, and we do have snakes and spiders and all sorts of things here. And a month or so ago, I was on a Zoom video conference with my Quantum Revolution team members, and I was just, we were talking away. It was quite an intense conversation, and then all of a sudden I heard my dog Lucy bark, and I went, "Oh, I've just got to go and deal with that." And I went outside, and Lucy, who's a 4.5 kilo toy poodle Shih Tzu, has a snake's head in her mouth. So we live actually in a city, but with a lot of bush around us. So I did everything to sort of promote the fact that Australia is indeed a place with dangerous animals. It just
Sure it is.
She survived.
Well,
I sort of rushed off. She did survive, which was good. We sort of I had to rush her off to the vet, and for the first hour and a half, we weren't sure whether or not she'd make it. But she's one courageous little thing, and she did make it, so it was good.
Wow,
it was good.
Wow. Well, that's really funny considering Christian's show was called Beheading the Global Snake.
Yeah, like that's no coincidence.
That is. Or Brian, that's quite a synchronicity.
No. You pronounced it right the first time.
Okay,
it's spelled synchronicity. It's just pronounced coincidence.
Okay. So Jen, talk to us about this idea of breaking down the walls of fears and anxieties, because there's something that, is really plaguing a lot of individuals these days, and it's anxiety for sure. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about moving through fears, but a lot of people are going through a lot of different anxieties. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how you use that approach to help people find their potential?
Yes, absolutely. And you're right, Nicole. It's actually one of the things it's not talked about nearly enough. And I think that because there is a lot of stigma to it, and, I'm someone who has been, I've experienced anxiety and been an anxiety sufferer. So, and I feel I've really come out the other side of that. And, but it is, and it's something that I now feel quite committed to talking about, because I feel for me, when I was in the thick of it, there was a very high level of shame. I thought that there was something really wrong with me, but that no one else was experiencing that. So I thought I was this very weird person, and that it couldn't control or manage her responses. And then since I've been on my own journey and then popped out the other side, I can see, so, it is something that is very silent. It's actually very insidious in people's lives, and we're not speaking about it enough. It's not spoken about enough. And I was looking at the stats the other day. In the US, 40 million people experience anxiety. And in Australia, we've got obviously a smaller population, but another very large percentage of people here are experiencing anxiety. And, this is something that it's not spoken about, and I think it maintains its power over people because it's not spoken about. So I guess, if you like, my comment is about actually coming out of the closet. There's a whole lot of, it's really, really important to actually to come out and start talking about this, because if we're not talking about it publicly, then how can people find any way through or any way past it? And let me tell you, there is an absolute way past it. It does take some time, and there's different ways of dealing with it. And I guess in terms of, perhaps if I just share a little bit of my journey, I was someone who was what I would call a very high functioning anxious person. So I was doing everything, in my late teens, early into my 20s, where I was absolutely ticking all of the boxes. I had a great job. I was working corporately in a consulting role, which I think the anxiety supported that in some ways, because you're always on your toes. But I ascended very, very quickly in that corporate advisory environment. And by the time I was 30, I was managing, a dozen people. I was managing multi-million-dollar accounts. It was all on. Yet on the inside, I was burning up with this feeling of not good enough and this anxiety, but I hadn't even identified what it was. And then it took me probably another 10 years it wasn't until I turned about 40 when I actually had a really, what we would term a dark night of the soul. And when I was really identified that I was experiencing not just anxiety, but I was experiencing something called generalized anxiety disorder, which is pretty severe. And I was actually hospitalized at that time because I was in such a bad way. But I had spent really from my late teens until I was about 40 in this haze of thinking there's something, I have these responses, I have these reactions, I'm having these feelings of deep-seated prolonged fear, but I don't know, it doesn't have a name, and I just feel weird. I feel there's something wrong with me, and I don't know what to do. And then things came to a head where things became very clear in terms of how unwell I was. But that's how I think it might be for a lot of people, is that they don't feel that they quite fit in, yet they don't know, or that they don't quite know how to live their lives. It's like you're living your life, but you're living your life to about 70%. There's the next 30% you can never quite get to the edge of that, because there's this thing holding you back called anxiety. So
I'm curious because I've never had a severe case of anxiety, other than like when I've had to uh basically pitch a 6-minute funding pitch to 150 angel investors once. Like I had severe anxiety over that, but I've never experienced ongoing anxiety on I guess what one called like a cyclical basis. However, both my sisters and my brother suffer from it. And so from someone who's not experiencing it, what do you think because what it sounded like to me is that perhaps one of the underlying roots of it, and I'm sure there are varying roots to it, but it sounds like there's a restriction around people and them discovering who they are. Like they're boxed in so tightly into something that it's almost like they're suffocating from actually experiencing themselves.
Oh, you've put that so well. Yes, and absolutely it is. And look, there are different causes, and I can't, I'm not a therapist in space, so I can't speak from that perspective. But what I can speak from, I guess, is the lived experience, and also a lot of work that I've done in the space to really recover myself. I've recovered myself. There was some support from Western medicine, but most of it has been through my own work, and also through the journey of really looking at this whole experience from a quantum perspective. And I'll talk a bit about that later. But you're exactly right. In fact, if you haven't experienced it, it's very hard to understand. And so my sister is in the same position as you. She's not been able to understand the experience that I've had, and that can be frustrating. But then you just move through that. But really, what it is, when you're in the grip of an anxiety attack, and I would say to you that what I had was was generalized anxiety disorder. So it's a general worry about everything. But it's so Nicole, you might have worries. You might worry about, is the bin put out, or whatever it is that you might have a worry about. And that will come and that will go in your mind, and it'll be just it'll just come and go. For someone who's experiencing anxiety, it becomes this very internalized downward spiral, but it's a rumination pattern of thoughts that just spiral around. If you can imagine, and with my finger at the moment, I'm drawing sort of like this circle, but if you can imagine grabbing a pen and drawing a circle on a piece of paper, and you're just constantly in the same circular pattern, and the ink is building up on the page, it's building up, you're getting this blacker and blacker space on the page. It's that blackness that's occurring in your mind. You basically, you're in this space of just not being able to do anything other than just you're stuck in this thought pattern. And I liken it to being inside a dark room with the actual lights turned off. It's like you're frozen in time in this dark room. It's like the lights are turned off. You've got a blindfold on, and when you're in a heightened anxiety state, you're so frozen, you can't even understand where you are, and you wouldn't even think to try and find the light switch to turn the light switch back on. But when you are in what you come to realize as you start to learn to manage this state, is that if I'm in a heightened state, you recognize in your body, okay, I'm in a heightened state. What do I need to do to be able to find that light switch and turn the light back on? So I hope that analogy is useful to you. But what I'm really talking about there is that you're so caught in it that you can't see anything out, any way out, and it's this cyclical thought pattern that just goes on and on and on, and you're really looking for a pattern interrupt.
That I also have experienced that it comes and it goes, but I describe it as just being stuck in this mental loop. Like there's a part of you that knows that you're in this loop and you see and feel the loop going around and around, but you don't have any idea how to get out of it.
That's it. That's exactly right. And you're exactly right, Lisa. That's the box. You're boxed in the room and you're boxed in. So that's that boxed in feeling you're talking about, Nicole. It's exactly it. And that's when you're in the state of going, and you're not even conscious. You're not even conscious that there is a way to get out of it. You're so frozen or so stuck in that thought process.
You said a very key word there, because what it sounds like to me is it's almost like the subconscious the subconscious is always in the background. But it sounds like to me in this instance, it's almost like the subconscious has become this center stage monster. It's almost like a blender on full throttle that has completely taken over.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. And because exactly what's happening there is that it's actually the oldest part of our brain. I'm not sure if you know, but we have different segments of our brain, and this is the oldest part of our brain. It's our reptilian brain. And we've moved, when we're in anxiety, we're in a classic, what's called in the mainstream, a fight or flight experience. Our brain is in a state where we're in fight or flight. There is actually a whole range of hormones dumping in our system, creating, really encouraging us to, go and fight the mammoth or run from the mammoth, whatever our preference is. So what that means is that that's the blender effect that you're talking about. You're caught up in this spiral, and what's happening is that your prefrontal cortex, or what's known as your executive functioning brain, is actually switched off. And we've all been given a tool, though, to switch that back on. And this is the step. If anyone listening to this is experiencing anxiety, this is one of the core things that I teach people, and when I'm working with people, and that I've done very successfully for myself. And what you need to do in this instance is, it's about getting to the realization, I'm in this cyclical spiral, negative thought pattern, or I'm in a panic attack, or I'm experiencing physical things in my body that are telling me that I've got anxiety. So I know that now the only tool, or the best tool that I can use to actually release myself from my old reptilian brain, to my prefrontal cortex, is actually to put a big pattern interrupt into my physical body. And that pattern interrupt is actually using the power of your breath. So we've been given our breath. Obviously, we breathe automatically. We've been given this breath of life, and what we can do is we can use then this power of the breath to actually release ourselves out of the control of the anxiety and to get back into more of an executive functioning space. And so the way that you do that is you actually, and there's a couple of different techniques I'll share with you, but the really key way to do this is to actually, what we need to do, because when you're in a fight or flight, you're sort of it's that hyperventilating sort of, the body is breathing very quickly. So what we do to create the pattern interrupt is we actually hold our breath. Now, we're not holding it ad infinitum, we're not holding it for a long time, but what we're doing is we're putting a hold into our breath patterns. And the simplest breath pattern that I teach people and that I can share with you today is something called square breathing. So imagine you had a square on a piece of paper, and at the top of the square you had 4. On all parts of the square you had you wrote the word 4. Then what you would do is you would breathe in for 4, 3, 2, 1. You hold for 4, 3, 2, 1. You breathe out for 4, 3, 2, 1, and you hold for 4, 3, 2, 1. And you do that you do that cycle 4 or 5 times. Now, the pattern interrupt comes from the holding of the breath, because when you're holding the breath, you're telling your central nervous system, oh, it's okay. The mammoth is gone. If we're holding our breath, if we're actually calming our breathing down, calming our system down, we're now in a place where we can actually then stop releasing those hormones. Does that make sense to you? I know that's quite a bit that I've explained there, but
it makes total sense.
Basically, we're doing a big old pattern interrupt in our central nervous system by just holding the breath there.
Yeah, absolutely. It actually makes sense because, Lisa and I, we've talked about the breath of life on our show several times. And in it, you breathe to the count of 7, and then you hold your breath for 3 seconds, and then you release it very, very slowly. And I've always wondered
Mm.
about holding the breath for 3 seconds. I'm like, I wonder what exactly that purpose is. And now I get it. It's the pattern interrupt.
That's it. It absolutely is. And yes, the other technique that I teach is called ratio breathing, which is exactly what you're talking about. So you breathe in, you might breathe in for 6, hold for 8, and breathe out for 12. And this is something that there's actually a lot of benefits to this type of breathing. It's something that actually Tony Robbins teaches in terms of lymph. You actually get a lymphatic system drainage when you're doing this kind of breathing as well. But when we're talking about this, from an anxiety perspective, it is literally from a physiological perspective, it puts that pattern interrupt in and it starts calming the central nervous system down. The other thing because what we're wanting to do, so I want to talk about 2 things. The other thing, when you're in the height of an anxiety attack, you may not remember to do the ratio or the square breathing that I've just explained. But the one thing you can remember to do, and this is where I got my very first breakthrough in this, is the other thing you need to do is you actually need to breathe into the part of your body where you're experiencing the anxiety. So for me, I experience the anxiety very much in my gut. Sometimes, I'll feel my heart beating intensely, but I get this really strong, hot, shaky, awful feeling in my tummy. So what I have done, and what I've done successfully, and what I teach others to do is actually to breathe straight into wherever you're feeling the feeling. Now, this can seem a bit scary for some people. They go, but that's the anxiety, that I want to run away from that. But remember that old saying, what you resist persists. We absolutely need to be breathing into where the energy is. And there's a paradox here, because as soon as you start breathing into it, it'll start dissipating, because the energy of the anxiety is being released. It's being dissipated. It's being acknowledged. And you mentioned earlier, Nicole, about this being a very subconscious activity. It is. And I like to say to people, anxiety is, you're a very normal person to experience anxiety. There's nothing wrong with you. What those of us who are experiencing more heightened anxiety are experiencing, though, is that we're experiencing, anxiety is actually a safety mechanism to keep us safe. In years gone by, centuries ago, millennia ago, we needed to actually have a healthy fear of the mammoth or the saber-toothed tiger, because potentially they were going to come for us, and we would want to be running away from them. But in this day and age, we don't have that same fear, but we do really, we can have the same physical response. And so what we need to do is just understand that I often say to people, look, anxiety is just your fear response a little bit it's out of control. Imagine you've put the foot on the accelerator really hard in the car, and the tachometer has just gone blowing out, like the revs of the car have gone way too high. You, with your power of breath, can bring that all the way back down and achieve more internal calm. And you've got control. I think the other thing too is that people who've experienced anxiety, they feel, and I know for me, when I was in my darkest moments with this, I felt like it was going to eat me alive, and I thought I was going to die as a result of the feeling of the anxiety. That's how bad it was. I literally thought it was going to kill me.
Well, I can totally, I can totally relate to this idea of breathing into the anxiety. I mean, I teach this to Brian when we're doing yoga. I tell him to breathe into the area where he feels the stretch the most. It's one thing that I learned through my yoga experience and learning from my body that, and I also knew this just from being a massage therapist. I always got my clients to breathe into the pain wherever I was pressing or leaning into, for them to breathe into it, because it actually, it's like you said, it releases it. But our first instinct is to run away, is to avoid it. But this breath brings in so the way I see it is, when it comes to stretching, is it almost creates an organic stretch, because an inhale naturally expands, right? When you breathe into your lungs, you're expanding your lungs. So when you breathe into that area, you're expanding. And if you're having anxiety, that's such a contracting kind of energy, it's like, it's so tightening. So when you start to breathe in, you're absolutely expanding the area and allowing it to breathe.
That's it.
It's funny. I learned from having children yet very young, and I had my children with natural childbirth, and I learned the Braxton Hicks method of breathing. And I have to tell you, it helped me so much later when I actually developed anxiety and was having anxiety attacks, that I was brought back to that and used breathing, but not because I was taught to use it for anxiety, but I was taught to use it to help me
birth a child,
this baby. And
but isn't that anxiety, birthing a?
Well, it's like Nicole just said, your first reaction is to want to hold your breath, and breathing into it makes such a big difference.
It is
the programming.
Now, I wanted to ask, I know some people who have never experienced anxiety before until recently. A good friend of mine, in fact, we just had lunch, and she was telling me how she is having anxiety lately, and she's not even able to go to a yoga class, which really surprised me because this is someone who's very outgoing and would go to all sorts of different classes in the gym and, lift weights with guys and just different stuff like that. And it kind of surprised me. And I was wondering what you think about the energies that have been coming in and just the shift that this planet is going through, and the unmasking that Jessica talks about in her videos and in her teachings. Is that why some of these things are coming to the surface? If anxiety is truly that subconscious mind kind of being in the forefront of things, is that the reason that people maybe are experiencing anxiety now when they hadn't before?
Yes, absolutely. And we are, I would agree with you. We're in this age. This year is all about we're in a year of self-awareness. We're in the first year. We're in a year of self-awareness, and we're in this year of unmasking. So people who this is what I've been observing, people who may not necessarily be on their spiritual path or see themselves on their spiritual path, they are all responding and having these major changes. The amount of relationship breakups, the amount of change that I'm seeing in people around me who may or may not be on their journey. There's these new energies coming in, and effectively, on the 21st of December last year, the gateway to 3D shut, and we really stepped into 5D. So everyone is experiencing a stripping back, and everyone is experiencing a greater level of awareness of things that might have been under the surface. They're actually surfacing now. They can't get away from them. So your friend, whatever, as you were talking, I felt, yes, she's had a triggering incident. So something has triggered her to suddenly move from being this confident person into someone who can't go out at this particular point. And what all I can say to people is that rather than turning away from these, rather trying to avoid what's going on, walk headfirst into it, because, for every negative, any negative that's occurring, it's actually a shortcut to greater awareness and greater enlightenment and greater joy on the other side. But we've just got to go in and weather the storm. So just as, we've said with breathing into the anxiety when you're having a severe attack, when these things are starting to come up, when this unmasking is starting to happen, then be open to it, I guess is what I'm saying. And
because, as you said, what you resist persists.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more, if people resist this year, particularly in this first 3 months, as we're leading up to this retrograde in March, it will just get worse. Anything that you thought you wanted to hold on to, or that you think you were trying to hold on to, it's actually likely to just slip through your fingers. That this is the level of unmasking that we're having. And look, I've been experiencing it in my own life. I've gone into, next level of relationships, really a couple of relationships, really looking at what's going on there. It's something that's happening everywhere. It's affecting all of us. So it's actually what we choose to do with it. It's effectively what we choose to do with it and how we choose to react to this. And my best support and advice and guidance would be to say, basically brace yourself, but have your eyes wide open, really walk into this and be courageous. This is the time where if we're courageous, particularly this next 3 months, if we're courageous and we really look to face what's going on, face these demons, look at the things we've been avoiding, you will be amazed at how you come out the other side. And if you look to change your story about things, I mean, that's the other thing that I'm often talking to people about and teach people about is how to change your story. What is the story you're telling yourself about this situation? What's a new story that you can tell? But yeah, we're in this space and in this zone. The other thing probably that I also wanted to just touch on was that, and it's related to everything we've talked about so far, is that when the Buddhists talk about becoming the observer, and when they talk about becoming, looking at becoming detached from a situation, what they're talking about is actually stepping out of the anxiety and looking at it, not seeing yourself as being inside or being the anxiety or being the problem that you're experiencing, but actually stepping outside and having the presence of mind to actually look at what is going on. And that's a very key tool, and that's what the breathing allows you to do. By breathing, we're stepping from the, I'm giving you a whole lot of different ways of looking at this at the moment, but from a physiological perspective, we're moving from the old brain, the reptilian brain, into the executive functioning. That's what's happening when we're doing the breathing. We're getting into the now, and we can start watching what's going on for us rather than being in the thick of it and not being able to control what's going on.
It's interesting. That idea of being the observer, it's very similar to a concept that Christian introduced 2 weeks ago, or at least when this airs 2 weeks ago. About, we were talking about history and that there's some sort of witness, that somebody has to see something, as an external observer, to see something before it's, I forget what he said.
To shape the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess from my perspective, I'm saying, yes, it's actually when you can step back into the observer's seat. So instead of, let's use the analogy of playing tennis, we've just had the Australian Open here. It's been a big festival. So, I can be the tennis player on the court, or I can, in the thick of the game and in the stress of all of that, or I can be the observer watching the play. And what we want to do from, if we're dealing with anxiety, we want to actually step back into that observer role and watch what's going on, so we can then be more calm and then actually come from a place of calm and quiet and peace rather than stress and anxiety. And then back to your comment about the great unmasking that's going on at the moment. That's what I'm also encouraging people to do, is rather than being caught up in the story of that, step back from that and say, okay, yes, some really bad stuff's going down right now. I get it. And instead of being in the story of that, okay, what is the bigger picture for this, what is it that perhaps I've been avoiding that I really need to look at? What's this story? What's this experience bringing up for me that I've been avoiding that I need to look at right now? Because this is all about, this next couple of months is all about looking at what you've been avoiding and dealing with it, or the universe, people, places and things, circumstances are going to come and they're just going to make you look at it. That's what's going, and that is really where we're at.
And I think the other important thing that we've touched on a little bit is being transparent and speaking about these things. I think it's the time now. In fact, I just had a conversation with my sister, Kathy, who I know is listening to this morning, about sharing the fears and sharing the dark side of yourself with everyone and not keeping it hidden, talking about the fact that you have anxiety or you have depression or suicidal thoughts or whatever it may be that you've been hiding from the world that you're ashamed of. And I think the more that people come out and start talking about their experiences with these things and shedding light on them, that we can start, getting rid of them.
Absolutely.
Start letting them go.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of my journey, I can tell you absolutely, it's the most, I talk about helping people find their freedom and helping people, really step into their freedom. This is actually the point. It's actually about becoming truly transparent in terms of who you really are. Now, I could have come on this show today and talked to you about a whole range of things. I've got a lot of experience. I've helped a lot of people get their businesses online, a whole range of things. I could have come and spoken to you about that. But what's the most important thing I feel at the moment for me to be talking about is this journey of anxiety and how you can get over it, because that is me being truly transparent. Because otherwise, and this is something that is, otherwise we stand behind the mask of perfection. And I'm not sure about you, but I have certainly, I've stood behind the mask of perfection for a long time, but it's a very tiring, lonely, difficult and draining place to be, because you're not.
I think I'm the poster child for that.
No, well, so you know what I'm talking about. But the thing is,
Yes.
when you lay down that mask of perfection, it's an incredible. I can't even begin to tell you the weight that has been lifted from my shoulders. I am a different person since I have become more transparent. And I'm more transparent across my life. This is not about me just being, sitting here on this podcast talking to you about my journey. I'm transparent with my family, with my friends, with my colleagues, with my clients. I will go there if you want to go there with me. And I will help you go there if you want to go there with me in terms of whatever it is that you feel is holding you back. Because I know that, and at the Quantum Revolution, we talk all about vibration and frequency. And, the higher you are, and you guys know about vibration frequency, the higher you are up the frequency chart, the better and more flow you will be in your life. And let me tell you, transparency, if you can become transparent, if you can lay down those masks that you're wearing, and you can step into who you truly are, and you really don't give a damn in terms of what other people think, your life, you step into freedom. You step into a whole other stratosphere of who you could possibly be. And then that's when you can really start talking about manifesting and creating the life you want. A lot of people say, well, I've done the law of attraction, I've tried to manifest and it's just not working for me. I can tell you why it's not working for them, and I can tell you why it hasn't worked for me, because I haven't been true and transparent and authentic to myself and to others. As soon as you let all of that other stuff go, you step into this incredibly different space in yourself.
One of the things that I love to do personally is to find ways to relate something I'm not used to experiencing into something that I do. Mm-hmm. And so listening to you guys talk about this, the way I see anxiety is it's like an inflammatory response of the body. And, one of the things that if we're talking about unmasking, our number one mask or mode of defense is our skin. And when the skin gets inflamed or itchy or anything like that, it's because something's trying to come to the surface and you keep avoiding it. Mm-hmm. And you keep pushing it down. And that's kind of like what this anxiety is like. It's like an inflammatory response to something that really needs to be brought to the surface and made aware of, brought to the attention, because everything that we leave in the dark and in the shadows controls us.
Absolutely.
Until we shine light on it and bring it to the surface, it's going to always control us. And so to me, it's kind of like when we take something that's like, obviously anxiety is more of a mental and emotional response, but it's kind of like the inflammatory response of the body. And I kind of, just talking about the mask and the skin, for me, it just kind of pulls it all together.
Yes.
I think you're absolutely right, Nicole. From my own experience, and this was like 19 years ago, I all of a sudden started having anxiety attacks they were so bad I couldn't breathe. Mine were, you say yours are in your gut, Jen. Mine was just in my chest and in my throat. And to the point where I was, going to doctors, and I was really worried that I was like, I had asthma. I'm like, I didn't know what was wrong with me. Like, I was really constricted in my esophagus and I couldn't breathe at all. And, basically what came to light for me was just childhood trauma and things that I hadn't dealt with, that I just kept, I kept this mask of perfection on, that everything was fine and, all that stuff was behind me, but I never really looked at it or dealt with it or went through the emotions of feeling what it is that I needed to feel. So, your description, Nicole, is just absolutely perfect. It was just something under the surface that was just, it was like, it is my time to come out. Like, you better look at me and you better acknowledge me or I'm going to make your life miserable. That's how it felt.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, it can come to a head like that. And it sounds like, yes, and that's exactly it. It is, there are things, I mean, typically the things that occur to us sub 7 are going to create the patterns and the beliefs and the story and the experiences that we have in our life. And there is trauma. And typically there is trauma, there is a fear of something, there's a fear of something that's driving that anxiety. And for me, it was, and it varies for different people, but for me, it was this fear of being, abandoned or alone. Now, I came from a really loving family and from very caring parents, but for whatever reason, that was what I picked up, and that was what was a driver for me. And we're all got these different experiences, but it's about actually, as you say, looking underneath and saying, okay, what is it that's there, and really having the courage to look at that. And I think that's where you would have been on your journey, there, in terms of just saying, okay, it's time for me to look at this. And I also think sometimes anxiety comes up in these waves. It might come up for us later in life because we're then at a point of maturity that we can look at what happened, perhaps many years ago as a child. It doesn't come up till we're ready to really deal with it.
And that's exactly what I was told at the time, that, I asked, like, why is this coming up for me now? And I had sought out therapy, and my therapist said that sometimes what can happen is if we have children, when our children reach the age in which we experience the trauma, that it triggers it for us.
Absolutely.
As well as being coupled with the fact that I was feeling safe in my life. Like I was in a, financially doing well, in a relationship. Like everything felt safe to me. And so it felt like a safe time to let it out as well. But it can just come at you out of nowhere.
That's exactly right. And it can fester like that, but you're right. And you were feeling safe. So how great that you're in that position to be able to finally just, look at it and let it go. So it really is. And look, and what I want to say to people too is, if people who are listening to this who are experiencing anxiety, one of the other questions that I often get is, well, what about medication? Should I let go of my medication? I want to say right now, I'm not a therapist, but what I absolutely say is that if you're on medication, there's a good reason that someone may have put you on that, and you need to be really acknowledging that that's an okay place to be. It's a place of courage to actually say, okay, I need some help. If someone had diabetes, would we deny them their medication to help them with their diabetes? Would we do that? No, we would not.
Well, food is better. Changing your diet is better.
Food is better. Yeah, look, there are a whole range. I agree, Brian, and there's a whole range of things that do need to happen. I'm not saying just rely on medication. And there's a whole range of things. It's about really eating well. It's about sleeping well. It's about doing the calming, meditative yoga style practices or whatever works for you to help you calm your brain down. It's about there's something else I want to talk about. It's about taking the right supplements. So there's a range of things that you need, that you can do to bring yourself out of this naturally. But I also, sometimes people are demonized because they, potentially in spiritual circles, oh, well, you're spiritual, you shouldn't have to be taking medication, or there's a lot of demonizing around that. And what I want to say is that for some people, the medication can be the bridge to then healing. And I was only on medication for a very, very short period of time. But and I got off it as quickly as I could because I was doing these other practices. But what I would say to you is that anyone who's listening who is on medication, I want you to just feel good, because that's a tool there that that's a tool that at the minute your body can work with. And over time, hopefully your body can work with other things to help it so you don't need as much medication. But I want to normalize that for people, because I think sometimes people listening could go, oh, I'm on medication. I'm going to be on it for the rest of my life. You won't have to be. There are ways and means of getting around it, but don't be feel bad about being on it at the moment.
No, it's 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 kind of like if you've literally been under anxiety, it's like you've been drowning and trying to catch your breath. You keep coming up to the surface, you're trying to catch your breath, but you keep going underwater. Someone finally throws you a life jacket, which could be the medication. It allows you to catch your breath. It allows you to recover somewhat until you have enough strength to take the life jacket off and swim back to shore. Like that. It's kind of like that. So no judgment around that. For me personally, I'm not a huge fan of medication, but I also know it has its place when it's needed. There are always room for certain things, and we shouldn't be judging people because of certain methods may work for them versus others.
Yeah, that's why I brought that up. The other thing too that I wanted to share with you today, and this is something that your listeners may or may not be aware of, but there's now a genetic marker that actually indicates that can actually, we actually know that it can be a precursor for you to get anxiety. It's not going to determine that you absolutely will, but it is something that you can work with naturally to address. And I'm not sure if you've heard about it, but it's called the MTHFR gene. And so what's happened is in the last few years since
I got tested for that recently, and by my naturopath said that I may have the marker for that, and because it also affects your thyroid.
That's right, and it also affects fertility. It affects a whole range of things, and so yeah, this is a really important thing for people. Again, in my journey, I heard about it probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I read an article. I was at my wit's end. I was just like, come on, we've got to need to go to the next level on this. And so I read this article, and I found this article, and it basically said yes, that basically the MTHFR gene, it's a gene that can be mutated. It can be mutated on one side or both sides, so of the chromosome. And what that means effectively is that it could come from the matriarchal lineage or it could come from the patriarchal lineage. So you might have one side mutated or you might have both. Now, if there is a mutation of the gene, and obviously if it's both, it's more serious, more impactful. What this means is that your body does not create a particular enzyme that then is the precursor to then being able to create serotonin and dopamine. Hello? If you can't create those things naturally, do you not think that there might be some potential issues there with anxiety or depression? So I took myself off to have the blood test, and I went to a fantastic integrative doctor. So she's a general practitioner. We call them general practitioners in Australia, but she has a complete holistic view around supplementation. And I said to her, could you please test me? And because I said, I'm pretty sure I'm probably mutated on both sides. And I was. And no surprises there, because there's a history in my family of anxiety and depression as well. So anyway, I got tested, and the answer was yes, that I was. And then the response to that, there's no drug that one needs to take. It's actually about taking different sorts of vitamins and supplements at different times of the day to actually help the body create and do what it needs to do. So I just wanted to let people know there is a very, if you really feel concerned about how your your journey with anxiety and you can't seem to get on top of it, you might be meditating like a demon and doing all sorts of things, doing yoga 3 hours a day and still not getting any breakthroughs. There could be some physiological impact here that you could look at as well. And certainly for me, that has helped me in my journey. So I do meditate. I have a very strong self-care routine, and I can talk a bit about that in a moment, but I have a very strong self-care routine, live a very healthy life. But I needed, again, this has actually helped me. It's been another step in my healing journey around this. So I just wanted to share that with people, because sometimes many people haven't heard of that quite yet.
What are the supplements that help with that?
So
I was going to ask, is magnesium one of them?
Magnesium at night. So magnesium, yes, definitely at night. But in the mornings, it's about B vitamins, particular B vitamins. So I take a methyl B6 and a B3. So those are very, very important. Plus my doctor at the time, you really probably do need to go to a naturopath or a doctor who can help you with this. But basically my doctor at the time put me on specific things. There was specific amino acids that my body needed that it wasn't getting in the food. And we all know, sometimes we're not getting what we need completely in our food. So how do we supplement for that? I also take high levels of zinc and vitamin C to support my immune system. So, and then at night it's about magnesium, For me now it's about magnesium and fish oil. I don't have to take anything too much at this point. So, but I just wanted people to know that there's different ways there's many ways of getting healing around this. There's different things you can do that are going to complement each other, and then the jigsaw puzzle will fit together, and you can really step into a great place with all of this. But a lot of it too, aside from the supplementation, it is the way you're living your life. So it is about getting enough sleep. People who are highly anxious and really do need more rest. It is about eating really, really well, and it's about having a very high level of self-care, because if you're not well rested, you're not eating well, if you're not looking after yourself, then triggering things can happen for you that will send you off, whereas they won't send other people off. It's just about understanding yourself and your body very clearly. And then finally...
Well, speaking of getting rest... sorry, I was just going to say, you mentioned getting rest, and I know that you had insomnia for decades, and that was kind of healed during Quantum Revolution tour. Did you want to share with the audience your experience with that? Because that's pretty big.
It was pretty big, and it really, really was. And I mean, the Quantum Revolution tour was amazing, and for me particularly. So I'm coming from Australia. So I'm coming from the east coast of Australia. I had to fly to Miami, which is pretty close to the east coast of the US. So it's a long way from here. It's a 24-hour journey by the time you're on and off planes, and you've, really door to door, it's a 24-hour journey. So I went to Miami in October, very excited. I was speaking on the stage with Jessica about how to create your new reality in your old reality, and really looking at this from a quantum perspective. I spoke a bit about anxiety and how to turn all of that around. And so I went. It was an amazing few days. I led the yoga activities that we were doing, all those sorts of things. And I'd really put my sleep issues to one side. I just said, well, whatever it is going to be, it's going to be, because I'm here, I'm excited, and I'm part of the process. But as you know, you've spoken with Jessica and you've heard what we do at these events. It's about, the room was really pumped full of really high level frequencies. We were drinking quantum water. We were doing lots of breath work. There was lots of change and movement and sound and light frequencies that were really impacting my body. And the fascinating thing for me was that I did that long journey to Miami. I was only in Miami for 5 days. Then I had to come back to Australia because I had some client commitments that I needed to work on. I came back, and my sleep patterns, my issues around sleep were gone. All of the fear and anxiety I had, because I think there was an anxiety response that I had around sleep, it was gone. And it wasn't something that I'd gone to Miami to specifically address. It was probably the last thing on my mind, but it was one of the great outcomes as a result of that event. And all I can say to you is it was the full body immersive experience that I got in Miami that made all of the difference. We were turning on DNA. We were using frequencies to turn on DNA to really help access more of our brains and to really start shifting into, our highest potential. And that's what I managed to do with my sleep. So it was sort of like a really amazing, side benefit to what had already been an incredible experience for me.
You just said something that makes me wonder something. You talked about this idea of the full body immersion and activating DNA. And you then just talked about this gene that inhibits the flow of serotonin and dopamine. So would it then be possible that these activations, this DNA activation, is turning on the things that weren't turned on in you?
Yes,
that might be turned on in others?
Yes, absolutely. And Nicole, I was saying to someone the other day that actually I'm going to go and get myself retested for that gene. I'm going to give myself a year of real immersion and another year of real immersion in this work. But if we listen to Bruce Lipton's work around the epigenetics, what we think is what we believe, this is something that I certainly am interested in looking at, because I believe that I no longer see myself as someone as a victim of anxiety. What I do see is that I see myself as someone who's experienced anxiety, who may have anxious moments from time to time, but I live a very different life. I don't label myself that way, and I've created a whole different story around my life, and that's the other piece that we talk about at the Quantum Revolution, and that I talk about specifically. Change your story, change your life. And that's what you get to do when you come on a Quantum Revolution Tour event with us. You actually get to step out of your old life. You get to step into this full body immersive experience. And we're here having a physical experience. And I know a lot of people who are light workers love to be meditating, doing work in the ethers, doing all sorts of things, and to be having those communications. I mean, I have a light language myself. There's a whole range of things that I love to do. I love meditation. I love going into that space. But I also have to acknowledge that I'm fully here. I'm actually having a fully physical experience, and I'm in this vessel that is designed to have a fully physical, immersive experience. So instead of me going into the ethers for an amazing experience, let me be here fully right here, right now in my body, and let me actually start turning on some of let me start turning on some of the DNA. Let me start activating some of these things in my body that are lying there, some of these skills in my body and some of these resources in my body that are lying here latent. And that's a really important thing. What we're doing at the Quantum Revolution Tour is we're again helping people step into their freedom, take their power back, and really tap into some of these resources and some of these things that are latent inside of us that we don't even know that they're there. Joe Dispenza's written a book called Becoming Supernatural, and the fact of the matter is that we can, and this is what we're really, I guess, our true mission at the Quantum Revolution Tour is to help people step into their freedom and to start actually using the body and start manifesting from the body as we were meant to, as we were actually, as we from the innate resources and tools we've been given. We've just been shut off from this technology for thousands of years. The ancients knew more about how to manipulate time, how to manipulate their bodies, how to actually move and engage at a deeper level with themselves than we do now. For all of our amazing technology and the internet and our ability to fly, we actually don't know enough about this one vessel that we have. And that's what the Quantum Revolution is all about, is we're actually helping people step into and discover more about themselves and to, open up more of their brain's potential and open up more of their body's potential using this vessel that we have.
I think that's great, because if there's one thing that I feel like the spiritual community really downplays is the impact of our vessel. It's all about, what can we meditate? Which dimension can I move into? But you're here right now in this body. There's got to be a really good reason why. And, when you talk about the ancients, you can go back to the very simplest thing that almost anyone knows, the rain dance, this idea of that, that the ancients were able to use their body and dance and movement to create rain if they needed to bring the rain in. It's there's a reason why they had all those rituals. And I think it's really nice to hear someone finally talk about the importance of our vessel, because there's so much emphasis on either the mind and the heart and the emotions and the pineal gland and that's all great. It's all very powerful stuff. We want to utilize all of it. But in that sentence, yes, you want to utilize all of it, which is your body as well, and how to move the energy through you in this actual realm.
Absolutely.
So thank you for emphasizing
absolutely.
that.
Because we particularly in our Western society, I won't speak for other cultures because I spent a lot of time in Bali and they do things very differently there. But in our Western culture, we're living from the neck up. We're not engaging our body. We're not actually acknowledging it for the power that it has. And a lot of this technology and information has been shut away from us, and now it's time to actually start stepping into that. And that's what at the Quantum Revolution Tour we're bringing. We're basically unveiling a lot of this stuff and showing people how they can engage, particularly with different energies, how they can engage with scalar energy around them and around us, and how we can actually then engage our own brains and our own bodies to actually go to that next level within ourselves. So it's extremely exciting. It's just, and anything can happen. I mean, we heard some amazing stories of people getting quite significant healings from illnesses that they were experiencing while they were there. We've heard some very interesting things from people's experiences.
A little while ago, you mentioned quantum water and drinking quantum water. Are you talking about a brand or the brand that has CBD in it, or are you talking about the way that water behaves at a quantum level?
Great, yeah, good question. So we've been working with Helena Riley from Quantum Sound Therapy, and so she does have some quantum water that she has charged specifically. But that's what we use there. We're also using her Miracoil devices, and basically what that water is doing is that it has been, put through her processes, and it has been particularly charged. But we've all got the chance to charge our water through intention. So it is, this is something you don't have to wait till the quantum revolution to experience. You can be charging your own water now by putting intention into it as you think a great thought before you pick up your next glass of water, and then drink that in and knowing that it's charged. What we're creating at the Quantum Revolution Tour is this immersive whole body experience where you've got the water, the essential oils, the frequencies, the sound, the music, the dance, the teachings, the breath work, the meditation. It's all sort of coming together as an immersive experience.
Okay,
but
so
the water itself is part of that.
Okay, so for our guests, don't Google quantum water because you won't find what you're looking for.
No, not in this instance. What you'll find, you might find something along those lines, but in terms of this particular experience that we're developing, we're actually it's very, if you like, it's a very choreographed experience for people to come in and get a particular outcome. We really want people to come in, wake up, remember who they really are in terms of their highest potential, to really start accessing more of their brain. And then for people, if people are wondering about, I'm really not sure of my purpose in life, I'm really not sure what my plan is, I know I'm here to do something, then to come in and actually get some clarity around that, and then get some tools to then go and live this new quantum reality in their own, in their old reality. And one of the things there I want to highlight very clearly is that what we're sharing on the weekend is about how do you bring the goodness of what you've learned, what feels right for you, into your old life. This is not about going home and clearing house and moving out and changing everything about your life. Far from it. It's actually about saying, well, how do I go home and live as my new self inside my old environment? And how do I take action and live from a place where people will just ask me, what's going on with you? Your energy's changed. You feel lighter. You feel more connected. I want some of what you've got. So it's not about going home and, getting rid of the husband, or, kicking the cat out, or changing the job, or anything like that.
Although sometimes that can help.
Well, I'm not an advocate of animal cruelty in any way, shape, or form. But
no. I meant kicking the husband out.
Kicking the husband out. Look, and if that's in your heart, then do that. But I always say to people, particularly after a big immersive event like this, don't make any major decisions for at least 2 weeks to a month until after you've been through an event like that. It's not fair to yourself, and it's also not fair to people around you. You need to go home, get grounded, and we are supporting people when they leave the tour. They're supported to, they can step in and get some support ongoing after the event as well, because we do believe we're really not into, Jessica and I have a very strong view that these weekend workshops where you go, you get pumped up and leave with no support are very dangerous. So we have in place an opportunity for you to then, and we're still shaping up what that looks like, but it'll be to step into a supportive process afterwards. So it's about, getting really seeing what is possible for you by coming to the event, really stepping into that potential, creating a plan for your life. A lot of people come to me and say, I'm not sure of my purpose. I don't know what my plan is. Come and join us at the Quantum Revolution Tour. You'll get some clarity about what's really most important to you. And you'll also get some clarity about what you've been avoiding and how you can deal with that to then move forward.
And you may witness Brian's DNA getting activated and turning off his skeptic gene.
I could do that now. 1-900 activate my DNA.
Anything's possible, Brian. You can come over. What is it, to the light side or the dark side? I don't know what you would call us over here.
Crazy.
With all the light language I speak to you, your DNA should be activated. We're getting close.
That's right. You've got some DNA happening there. That's for sure. So yes, Brian, okay. We want to turn your DNA back on, baby, if you so choose. I'm
open.
Well, I think you're coming, so that shows me you're open.
He's definitely open.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to go back to what you were talking about the body and the vessel, and we're here, and we meditate and do all these things, and just how important it is to take care of our body. And when you were talking about it, it just made me think about all the chemicals and the processed foods and the sugar and everything that this country consumes so much of, and how dense that is, and how important what a vital part of your awakening it is to get rid of those things in your life and to help your body become lighter.
Absolutely. You're like, food is information. So whatever food you're putting into your body, you're putting a certain level of information into that. So everything is encoded with frequency. Everything that we experience, the light, the sun, when you sit in the sun, you're getting a particular frequency. Like my husband says, I just love, he's actually Middle Eastern, and so he's a man of the desert, and he loves nothing more than actually being out in the sun and working. And I often say to him, you should be wearing a hat or sunscreen. He goes, no. I said, I just love the sun. It's giving me something. And the food definitely is something that we absolutely need to be careful of. And look, I do understand about the foods of the American culture, and I would say to you, if you can get off the sugar, the number one thing to get off more than anything is the sugar, because it's a toxic. It creates toxic responses in the brain and in the body. It creates huge inflammation, and this is where, to eat as much whole food as possible, as least processed. Like in our household, we eat very little processed food. Everything that we eat is grown at the local and bought at the local farmers markets. We don't use tinned sauces, or we make everything from scratch as much as we can, because we're real believers that whatever we put into our body is actually going to show back up in our psyche and in our psychology and in our basically in our energy aura, it's going to impact us. So really, it's about eating as cleanly as you possibly can, as much fruit and vegetables, salads, seeds, all of those sorts of things, to really just keep your body as light as possible, but to keep it as clean as possible. And I know, and I've seen people on the journey of detoxifying from Western food. And I think in our culture, because of our advertising, because what we see all around, I mean, the billboards, the just our whole culture, it's promoting something that is opposite to being healthful. It's actually promoting, fast food, treating. It's all very short-term gratification kind of food that actually does nothing. It actually keeps us drugged. And I have a real belief that sugar is just, it's the most incredibly intoxicating drug in our society, and it's ironic that it's actually so freely available. It's a real drug.
Amen. And amen. We've actually talked about this on one earlier episode, after Lisa and I watched a couple documentaries. The sugar pill.
The magic pill.
The magic pill and sugar coated were two outstanding documentaries that dive into both of these on Netflix. One about sugar's evil, and one about how food can change. I mean, can cure you. That's why I mentioned earlier when you mentioned diabetes, and you immediately said something about drugs. I'm like, whoa, because you don't.
Well, that's true, and I'm not up with that enough. But I guess in the mainstream sense, people would still might feel that they would need medication. But yeah, you're right. I'd be interested to find out more about that. I'll have to watch those shows
and you're right, in the mainstream sense, you're absolutely right. But we're not the mainstream here on Enlighten Up.
No, you are not. I'm loving it. I am loving it. You are definitely, and Brian, you are not the mainstream. This is the skeptic is talking, which is great.
I know. I'm just what is going on here?
That has nothing to do with skepticism. I mean, eating healthily and what you put into your body is information. I love that. I mean, that has nothing to do with skepticism. That has to do with
everything is relative. If you have someone who's grown up on McDonald's and fast food their entire life, and then you walk into their life telling them it's toxic, they can't eat that, they're going to look at you and go, dude, what are you on? Just let me live my life. And you are going to be me and Jen and Lisa, and they're going to be you.
That's how we are with your parents. We talk to them about the way that they eat, and it just goes right over their head.
Although how shocking was it the other day when I was talking to my dad, he asked me about the keto diet, the Ketocin. I'm like, wow. So I gave him a book. I gave him a book called The Plant Paradox, which is the wasn't that the guy that did the movie, the Magic Pill? Or well, anyway, no. We found it. You might be interested in that book as well called The Plant Paradox. That gets into lectins and how they're bad for you.
But just cutting out process. I mean, if you just had to take one step and, just cutting out sugar or cutting out processed foods or, things like that,
that's it.
The best first step.
That's exactly right. And look, what I always say to people is just don't feel you've got to do it all. Don't feel you've got to do it all at once, because you know what? That will just breed a really, potentially with food, if you've been having sugar and so on for a long period of time, that's just going to breed, a cold turkey effect, and you'll be wanting, it's like because sugar is addictive, and you'll just be wanting to get back onto it. So with any of these things, and I often say to people, just start with 5, like with the self-care, because I was asked the other day, how do you do self-care if you can't, people have such busy lives. Just schedule in 5 minutes for yourself for self-care. It could be 5 minutes to do some yoga postures. That's where I started. It could be 5 minutes to do some meditation. It could be 5 minutes just to move your body in some way. Maybe it's 5 minutes to walk the dog. But just, you can give yourself 5 minutes a day. And if you can't give yourself 5 minutes a day, I would be asking you about your commitment to yourself. And likewise with food, it's about, okay, I'm just going to cut one thing out. I'm not going to, go cold turkey on everything, because that's just too hard for the psyche and the body to sustain. And what the science is now saying is that it takes 66 days to create a habit, not 21. So we just need to say to ourselves, let's give ourselves some time. Let's be compassionate with this. And I really want to highlight that. Any change you want to make in your life, come to it with this sense of love and compassion and this sense of, this is possible for me, rather than I can't do this. This is possible for me. This 5 minutes I can give myself every day. I might not be able to give myself 50 minutes yet every day, but I can give myself 5. And with the food, definitely.
Well, and to forgive yourself if you miss a day.
Yeah.
Don't beat yourself up.
That's it. Absolutely. And there's so much energy, so much energy that we can expend. And I've done this a lot in my life, where I've gone back and beaten myself up over something I should or shouldn't have done, or said or should have said, or, whatever, something that a whole level of guilt. I've given myself a big guilt trip about something. Well, you know what? All that guilt trip does is it puts me back further, my vibrational energy right back down the levels. And then I've got to do something to bring myself back up. I'm better to say, okay, right, I've had a little bit of a slip up there, compassion for that. Let's move on. Today's a new day. And just really focusing on keeping that as a thing. And yeah, the food thing is really significant. I remember for me, when I was about 23, because I'd enjoyed chocolate bars and all those sorts of things. And then I was about 23, I had this realization that this was really not a good way to live my life. And I just managed pretty much overnight to stop. But I would say that I'm probably unusual, and I probably have less of a sweet tooth. I'm more of I like chips and things like that. So I've got more of a salty tooth, salty disposition. But just making a decision about one thing for yourself and making a change in there can make all the difference, particularly in the food space.
And the one thing that I started thinking about too is people give up sugar and then they go to sugar substitutes. So, I'm still amazed that people drink like Diet Coke or, diet sodas. People that I think are healthy people or, eat pretty well. And then I'll see them drinking a diet soda. And you would be far better off drinking the regular soda than you would be the diet soda.
You so would, because of the chemicals in there. I mean, here in Australia, with Diet Coke, and when I heard this, because in my 20s I drank Diet Coke as well. Here in Australia, I'm not sure what it's like in the US, but here in Australia, our pilots of our airlines, it's illegal for them to drink diet sodas, particularly Diet Coke, because of what's in them. So there's a question for you. If our pilots aren't allowed to drink diet sodas because of what they might do to them when they're flying, what is in that would stop that? That would cause.
And why
that
are they serving it in the back of the plane?
Yeah, and why is it still a legal substance in our mainstream societies? So
we talked about this, Nicole and I, recently, the other night actually. And when we eat these foods, when we purchase these foods, we're giving our consent to them.
Yep.
So we're essentially being poisoned, slowly. But these foods are poison to our system. But when we buy them and we consume them, we're giving our consent. So people ask, why is this
vote
stuff
with your dollars,
right? Why is this stuff, still being made? I was watching the Super Bowl for about 5 minutes yesterday, and the commercials were they're so hard to take. The new Coke commercial that came out and making it just seem like this just beautiful, wonderful thing that's going to just bring you love and bliss and happiness. The programming that goes into this, and it's poison. It just blows my mind.
It's incredible. And I think we're going to, with the making of these documentaries that you mentioned, like Sugar Coated and The Magic Pill, we're moving into it. I think in 20, maybe 20 is too soon, but definitely 30 years' time, we'll be looking back at that sort of advertising that you're talking about. We'll be looking back like we look back at, the smoking advertising of the 50s and 60s. I mean, that was horrifying. I saw something the other day where it said, doctors said that smoking is good for you. Some doctors said that in the 50s or 60s in the US. But if we helicopter above all of this, and I don't want to get too out there, but if we helicopter above all of this, what we're talking about here is we're really talking about societal conditioning, and we're living in a matrix where there are certain things in place. And look, we could go off on another discussion about this. We probably don't have time, but there are certain things in place that are in place. Our foods, our governments, our news agencies, a whole range of things. They're in place to keep us as a society managed. And I would say to you that our food and our input of our food and alcohol is a really major part of that.
Absolutely.
We won't go into this discussion. I'm gonna briefly talk about it, and I think I would really like to do a podcast episode on this, Lisa and Brian. But sometimes people just don't really, the sugar or what's poisoning me. It's not enough to like really kind of grab you by, like, if you think about a mom and its kitten, like grab you by the scruff of your neck and like kind of shake you and wake you up, like this is not good for you. And you just talked about the Super Bowl and the programming that goes into you making sure that you, like, if people really understood the evil behind what is going on in the food companies and how they're poisoning us. I've talked about this on one of my videos, and Lisa and I were talking about this on the weekend. The Cenomix being used in a lot of processed foods. Pepsi products in particular is a huge one, but they're in a whole range of processed foods. And what people don't understand is Cenomix is a company that uses aborted fetal tissue in their food products and drink products. So to get you used to this idea of, and I know it sounds really far and out there, but it's happening. I mean, this is legal. You can look this up and find out information on it. This is not a conspiracy. This is actually happening, that aborted fetal tissue is being put into your food. And
there's a patent on it. You can look up the patent.
Yeah, there's a patent on it. And so, there's so much evil going into the food industry because of what it actually does. You said this, Jen, earlier, that, it's information. It goes into our DNA. It goes into our body, and it works on us. And so when you think about it from that aspect, I mean, we're talking about sugar as a poison, but there's so many things that go deeper. And I mean, we're not going to get into it right now, but I would like to do a podcast on that because I think it's important information that everyone needs to know because it's happening. It's not a conspiracy theory.
And
absolutely.
And I want to bring it full circle back to anxiety as well, because I think the whole point of, talking about food and the impact that it has on your body and your mind and your spiritual development and all of that. If you're having trouble with anxiety, I think that's one of the first places to look is what are you putting into your body? Like you said,
absolutely.
Maybe you're missing out on supplements and things, but if you're eating processed foods or drinking diet sodas or Coca-Cola or McDonald's or whatever it is, then that may be impacting your mind.
Absolutely. And absolutely, I would completely agree. And it absolutely would be. And so that's why I have observed a really clean diet for many years now, because I knew what food was doing to me. And there's another food ingredient. We've talked about sugar a lot, but there's another one that is very dangerous. And we can talk about this another time, but monosodium glutamate, so MSG. And that's in so many things. It's in your stocks. I mentioned earlier that we make here at my place place. We make our own food. We don't even buy vegetarian commercially made stocks because they've all got MSG in them, and that's an incredible poison for the body. And MSG, it's not only it's labeled as that, but there's a whole range of things. Anything with yeast extract, it's got a whole range of other little names that it's called, and it'll be in your foods too.
Natural flavoring is one of them too.
That's right. And then you look at all that food, so biscuits, chips, crisps, anything that you have, anything flavored will undoubtedly have that in it. So it's really, you've got to be so careful. And if I come back to, I guess, what I said to earlier, one of my maxims is change your story, change your life. So change your story about your anxiety, change your life. Change your story about being a victim to anxiety, change your life. But also change your story of the food that you think is appropriate for your body, and you will change your life. It's like it's changing the story we tell ourselves about what we enjoy and what we like. And the food manufacturers. Actually, they build into the food what's called the bliss point. I coordinated many years ago now an eating disorders conference, and we had a person who'd worked for the big food manufacturers speaking, and she said the food is manufactured to create in humans what is called the bliss point. The bliss point. Listen to that. That's the point where we've got them drugged and we've got them hooked. And really it's just about changing your story about what food is good for you as well, and getting away from the story that society says that those things are okay, because just because they're advertised to us doesn't make them acceptable to us.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, let's leave this on an exciting note, because we're excited to meet you at the Quantum Revolution tour, Jen.
I can't wait to meet all of you guys. It's just been so amazing speaking with you, and to have to think that we're going to be meeting in a very short period of time in March in Las Vegas is just super exciting to me. So I can't wait to meet you, throw my arms around all of you and give you a big hug, and to really be part of the process together. I think, because this is the other thing that we know, is that everyone who's coming, we've got some amazing people coming like yourselves, and everyone who's coming is going to actually add to the container, the space that we're creating. So it's not just about, it's about who's coming is going to make a big difference. And I think we might have spoken off air about the fact that we are also at the end of the event, we've chosen these locations specifically to do healings, and at the end of the event we're going to be going to the Mandalay Bay Hotel where that terrible shooting happened to do a healing, and I know that you guys will be very integral to that process. So I'm just super excited. Can't wait to have you guys there and to be part of it all, and to just really soak it all up. And for us all, I'd be curious to find out what breakthroughs you guys will get from coming to the event. Maybe we can come on after the event and have a chat about that. I'd love to sort of even interview you three about how that went.
That's a good idea.
See how it was great for you. Yeah. So that'd be really fun.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it would be fun just to hear your experiences.
Yeah, and you just speaking about the Mandalay Bay thing gave me chills down my legs. And it's like, that speaks to the power of the vessel. By you going there and using your vessel as this, almost like this portal of energy to transmute and cleanse and clear that energy, and then raise the vibration. That's what you get to do with your vessel. Like, that's the power of the body. Yeah. And I'm really excited about doing that, because that's one of the ways. There are so many ways, but that's one of the ways that we get to affect change.
It absolutely.
Jessica chose Vegas because it could use some heightened vibration.
We are going to play. Yes, it could, and that's why we're specifically going to places around the world where trauma has occurred, and we know that Las Vegas, it was a gold rush town, but we know that there's trauma happening there every day. And this is just about sending out some good love and some good energy. It's not about getting on a high horse. It's just about saying, okay, we're here to just sort of break up some of the density that's here, and to perhaps just indicate that there's a different way of doing things. And to pick up on what you said, Nicole, yes, absolutely, the body is the vessel. And this is something that I've really been working with this last year or so, in terms of, I read a book about life beyond this realm and this plane, and it was a channeled book. And the comment came back from the beings on the other side was that we come back to earth because we want to have a physical experience, because in the etheric realms we can't touch and feel and taste things. So that really gave me another perspective in terms of, hey, you know what, we actually, this, while life might be hard at times, we also have these incredible opportunities for these moments of joy and bliss because we can touch and feel and hug people and have amazing experiences with people that we can't necessarily have in the etheric realms. So there's a benefit to us being here.
Yeah.
And yes, let's celebrate that benefit. And that I guess is what the quantum revolution is all about, is helping us really celebrate being here in our bodies and having this physical experience in a way that's we're going to help you supercharge this experience so that it's so much better than it ever was before.
I like the word supercharge.
Yeah, and the time is now. The time is now to come to this event. The time is now.
Yeah. It really is. The time is now, particularly with what we're about to go through in the next 3 months, and then the changes that are going to be happening in the next few years on our planet. We really need to be geared up. We really need to be ready, and we really need to be able to respond to what's going on. I don't want anyone caught in the dark, going, oh my God, or in the, like deer in the headlights going, oh my God, we didn't know this was going to happen, or we don't know how to deal with this. We want you to get prepared. And this is a great way of getting yourself prepared, taking full responsibility and really stepping into your own power, because you're going to need it. We're going to need it in the next few years. We're going to need our own power.
Well, Jen, if our audience wants to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Well, they can get in touch with me. They can find me. I'm just thinking the best way. Do you mean in relation to the Quantum Revolution Tour or me personally?
Both.
So me personally, I'm on Facebook as Jennifer Ramsey. And there's a bit of an orange picture of me. So just type in Jennifer Ramsey, Brisbane, Australia, and you will find me. And I'll be very happy to friend you and chat to you more about what I do, because I do coaching for people personally to help them with their anxiety, but also help people finding their voice for their businesses. But but more importantly, in relation to the Quantum Revolution Tour right now, you can find us at quantumrevolutiontour.com, and that's all about the event. And I think you have a specific, unique enLIGHTenUP link that I would love people to follow. So if you want to put that, will probably go in the show notes. And then we also have a Quantum Revolution Tour Facebook community. So it's just called the Jessica Alstrom Quantum Revolution Community Group, and we would love to see anyone in there, because you'll be able to get our regular energy updates. You'll see and hear what's going on about the tour, and you'll be able to just be part of what is really becoming a very beautiful and very exciting community that we're building.
Oh, that's great. Well, to our audience, you definitely want to come. So if you do, you need to book a hotel room at the Red Rock Hotel in Las Vegas, because that will get you a 50% code coupon to use on your QRT ticket that we will be able to give you. Just email us info@enlightenup.us, and we'll be able to give you what that code is so that you can get the ticket at half price off, which is great. And all that information is in the description below, and all that information is also on our website under the events page. So if you do need more information, you can head on over there to find it all out. Jen, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having. Oh, thank you all three of you. I've just loved our conversation, and I really, really appreciate you and the amazing work that you're doing through this podcast. You're really spreading the word and really allowing and supporting so many people with what you're doing. So I just want to thank you for creating what you've created. You're three amazing human beings, and I can't wait to actually see you in the flesh in March. I think it's going to be really, really exciting. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, before we know it, Brian's just going to be a ball of energy.
I know.
I am a ball of energy.
He is. He's going to be in his light body. He is. Well, he could actually go into his light body right in front of us. That would be the most amazing thing. So
yes.
So that's really great. And look, and with that 50% off promotion, it's running for a limited time, and definitely go to info@enlightenup.us to get that code, because you'll need to book your room, and then you send that room booking to the group here, and then you'll be able to get that code from them for that 50% off. So we're excited. We're very much looking forward to seeing you in Las Vegas and having an amazing time together. It'll be just fantastic.
Yeah, I've already had a couple people email me about it. So hopefully we'll see more of you there. And this has been a really great show because as we've talked about anxiety, which is something we haven't really touched too much on. So for any of our listeners, if you know someone who's suffering from anxiety, please pass this show along to them. And again, Jen, thank you so much for being here. Brian, Lisa, I love you so much. And to our audience, we love you. We will catch you all again next week.
Thank you all for joining our show today. We appreciate you tuning in and supporting us. If any of you have any questions you would like answered on the show or any guests that you would like to see us have on our show, please email that information to us at info@enlightenup.us. And please follow us on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you haven't checked out Nicole's channel on YouTube yet, head on over there for more insight from her or visit her website, inflexibleme.com, where you can book a personal coaching session or a tarot reading. You can watch some of her most informative videos or you can sign up for her newsletter. And if you're interested in some light language healing, head to my YouTube channel, Lisa Loves Love, or send me an email to lisa@lisaloveslove.com to inquire about your own personal reading. Thank you again for joining us and supporting us, and we will be back with you all next week.